Elena Vasquez floated in the zero-gravity chamber, looking through the thick glass window at something that should not exist. Outside, in the cold darkness of space, a planet was being built. Not a space station or a moon base. A real planet, the size of Earth's moon, covered in metal armor and bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. She had been working on this project for 15 years. Her father had worked on it before her, his father before him. For over 200 years, humans had been building these massive ships in secret, far from the watching eyes of the galaxy's other species. The galaxy thought humans were weak. They thought humans were just another small species that barely mattered. The great powers like the hegemony and the council races looked down on Earth and its colonies. They saw human ships as tiny and pathetic compared to their mighty war fleets. They had no idea what humans had really been doing all this time. Elena pressed her hand against the window and smiled. The aliens were about to get the biggest surprise in galactic history. "Commander Vasquez, we need you in Section 12, came a voice through her radio. It was Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief engineer on this project. Terra's Fury was almost ready, and every detail had to be perfect. She pushed off from the window and floated through the corridors of the observation station. All around her, thousands of workers moved through the tunnels and chambers built inside what used to be a dead rock floating in space. For 2 centuries, humans had found worthless planets and asteroids in forgotten corners of space, places where no one else wanted to go. Then they had sent their secret construction teams. The work was slow and careful. First, they would hollow out the inside of the planet or large asteroid. Then they would build the ship's systems inside. The empty shell. Weapons, engines, shields, life support, computer systems. Everything needed to make a warship that could fight entire fleets and win. But these were not just big ships. They were planet-sized ships. Each one was as large as a small world, with armor plating thicker than mountains and weapons that could crack continents in half. The aliens had never seen anything like them, because nothing like them had ever existed before. Elena reached Section 12 and found Dr. Webb floating in front of a massive control panel. The screens showed hundreds of different readings from all over Terra's Fury. Temperature, power levels, structural integrity, weapon systems, everything. "How are we looking, Marcus?" Elena asked. Dr. Webb was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been working on planet ships longer than almost anyone alive. His hands moved across the controls with the skill of someone who had done this many times before. "Better than expected," he said, without looking away from his screens. "The quantum reactors are running at full power. The gravity manipulation systems are working perfectly. The armor plating sealed up this morning. We are ahead of schedule." Elena nodded. Terra's Fury was one of 300 planet ships being built at the same time across human space. Each one was hidden in a different system, far from trade routes and alien patrols. The hegemony and the other great powers had no idea that humans had been preparing for war on a scale never seen before. The plan had started over 200 years ago, when the first human explorers had ventured out into the galaxy. They had quickly learned that space was a dangerous place. Big, aggressive species conquered and enslaved smaller ones. The strong survived, and the weak became slaves or corpses. Humanity had looked small and weak to everyone else. Earth had a modest fleet of conventional ships. Human colonies were scattered and seemed poorly defended. Human technology appeared to be behind the galactic average. The other species had dismissed humans as just another minor race that would eventually be conquered or forced to submit. But humans had been playing a much longer game. While the hegemony built bigger and bigger fleets of normal warships, humans had been working on something completely different. They had taken the idea of a spaceship and scaled it up beyond anything anyone had ever imagined. Instead of building a ship and making it larger, they had taken entire worlds and turned them into ships. The technology had taken decades to develop. Gravity manipulation systems that could move planet-sized masses. Quantum reactors that could power weapons capable of destroying fleets. Armor materials that could withstand the impact of asteroids traveling at near light speed. Computer systems that could coordinate millions of different ship functions at once. But the hardest part had not been the technology. It had been keeping its secret. For 200 years, thousands of humans had worked on the Planet Ship project. Engineers, scientists, construction workers, military officers, supply teams. All of them had kept the secret. They had told their families they worked in mining or terraforming. They had filed fake reports about asteroid mining operations and planetary surveys. They had built elaborate cover stories to explain why so many ships were traveling to empty systems with nothing valuable in them. The galaxy's intelligence services had noticed human activity in remote systems, but they had dismissed it as typical human behavior. Humans were known for being willing to colonize worthless planets that no one else wanted. The aliens thought humans were just being stubborn and stupid, trying to make homes in places where nothing could grow. They had no idea that humans were building the most powerful weapons in galactic history. Elena looked at the tactical display, showing the positions of all 300 planet ships. They were spread across dozens of star systems, positioned to control every major hyperspace route in the galaxy. When the time came, they could appear anywhere within days, cutting off escape routes and surrounding enemy fleets. "Elena," Dr. Webb said quietly, "I just got word from Earth. The hegemony is making moves. Their fleets are gathering at the edge of human space. Intelligence thinks they are planning something big." Elena felt her stomach tighten. They had always known this day would come. The hegemony had been growing more aggressive over the past few years, conquering smaller species and adding their ships to their already massive fleets. Humanity had always been on their list of targets, but so far the humans had been too small to bother with. That was apparently about to change. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Maybe weeks, maybe days. The president is meeting with the Joint Chiefs right now. They want to know if we are ready." Elena looked out through the observation window at Terra's Fury. The planet ship was nearly complete, its surface covered in weapon batteries and shield generators. Around it, construction drones were putting the finishing touches on the armor plating. Soon it would be ready for its first combat mission. 300 ships like this one were almost ready across human space. The hegemony had no idea what was coming for them. "Yes," Elena said firmly, "we are ready. After 200 years of building in secret, humanity is finally ready to show the galaxy what we have really been doing." The age of planet ships was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Chin Liu stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, watching the largest fleet in galactic history gather at the edge of human space. The holographic display showed thousands of hegemony warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. Behind them came supply ships, troop transports, and mobile space stations. This was not just an invasion force. This was an armada built to conquer and occupy. The message had arrived 3 days ago. Fleet Admiral Corax of the hegemony had sent it personally, his scaled face filling every screen in human space as he delivered his ultimatum. The words were simple and direct. Humanity had 10 days to surrender completely. They would become a client species, giving up their independence and serving the hegemony. Their fleets would be disbanded. Their colonies would be occupied. Their people would work for their new masters. If they refused, the hegemony would take human space by force and enslave every man, woman, and child they found, Admiral Chun had watched that message with a slight smile on his face. Korax spoke with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle, someone who commanded more ships than most species had ever built. The hegemony fleet contained over 200,000 warships, supported by millions of smaller vessels. It was a force that could conquer entire sectors of the galaxy, but Korax had made one critical mistake. He thought he knew what humanity was capable of. "Admiral," called Captain Torres from the communication station, "we have incoming signals from all sector commands. They are requesting permission to begin Phase 1. Sean nodded slowly. Phase 1 was the revelation. For over 2 centuries, humanity had kept its greatest secret hidden from the galaxy. Today, that secret would finally be revealed. "Send the signal," Chun said calmly. "All units begin Phase 1. Let them see what we have built." Across human space, the same scene played out in dozens of star systems. Massive gravity distortions began appearing on sensors, readings so large that most alien observers assumed they were equipment malfunctions. Computer systems struggled to process what they were detecting. Energy signatures unlike anything in known databases. Gravitational anomalies that suggested objects the size of moons moving at impossible speeds. Fleet. Admiral Korax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Conquest. Around him, his sensor officers frantically worked, their controls trying to understand what their instruments were telling them. "Sir," reported Commander Vash, his chief sensor operator, "we are detecting unusual readings throughout human space. Large gravitational disturbances. The computers cannot identify the source." Korax's scaled features twisted into a frown. Humans were known for their tricks and deceptions, but this was beyond anything they had shown before. He had studied human military capabilities for years. Their fleets were small, and their technology was adequate but not impressive. They could not possibly have anything that would register on sensors at this range. "Magnify Sector 7, he ordered. The main display shifted to show a region of space near a human mining colony. For a moment, there was nothing unusual, just the normal traffic of cargo ships and patrol vessels. Then space itself seemed to ripple and bend. Something massive was decloaking. The object that appeared was beyond anything Korax had ever seen. It was spherical, the size of a small planet, its surface covered in what looked like continents of metal armor. Weapon batteries dotted its surface like cities, each one larger than most space stations. Energy shields flickered around it, distorting the light of nearby stars. "By the ancestors," whispered Commander Vash. "What is that thing?" Before Korax could answer, his sensors detected another one, then another, then dozens more. All across human space, planet-sized ships were appearing out of nowhere, taking positions that blocked hyperspace routes and surrounded hegemony forces. "Sir?" called his navigation officer. "We are detecting over 300 similar objects. They are moving to surround our fleet." Korax felt his blood turn cold. 300 planet-sized warships. How was this possible? His intelligence reports had said nothing about this. Humanity's entire fleet was supposed to number less than 10,000 conventional ships. Where had these massive vessels come from? On Earth, Admiral Chun watched the hegemony fleet's response with satisfaction. Korax's ships were scrambling, trying to form defensive formations against threats they could not understand. Some were attempting to retreat, only to find their escape routes blocked by more planet ships. The closest planet ship to the hegemony fleet was New Olympus, commanded by Admiral Sarah Park. Chun opened a direct communication channel to her. "Admiral? Park, you may begin the demonstration." "Understood, Admiral." "Beginning demonstration now." New Olympus slowly rotated, bringing its main weapon batteries to bear on a small hegemony scouting force that had moved too close. The scouts were fast attack ships, each one the size of a city block and armed with enough firepower to level mountains. The planet ship's weapons fired once. The energy beam was so massive that it looked like a new star had briefly flared to life. When the light faded, the entire scouting force was gone. Not destroyed or disabled. Gone. Turned into elementary particles and scattered across space. Across the hegemony fleet, alarm signals began blaring. Ship captains who had been confident of easy victory suddenly found themselves staring at weapons that could erase their vessels from existence with a single shot. Fleet Admiral Corax stood frozen on his bridge, watching his sensor readings with disbelief. The energy output from that single shot had been greater than his entire fleet could produce working together. And the humans had 300 of these ships. "Open a channel to the human command," he ordered, his voice barely steady. Transmission connected, and Admiral Chon's face appeared on Corax's screen. The human looked calm and relaxed, as if he were discussing the weather rather than facing the largest invasion fleet in history. "Fleet Admiral Corax," Chon said politely. "I trust you received our response to your ultimatum. What are those ships?" Corax demanded. "Our intelligence reported no such vessels in human space." Chun smiled slightly. "Our intelligence efforts have always been quite good, Admiral. We have been aware of your invasion plans for months. As for our ships, we call them planet ships. We have been building them for over 200 years, waiting for a day like today." "Impossible," Corax snarled. "No species could build such vessels in secret. The resources alone would be enormous. Humans are very good at long-term planning." Chun replied, "While you were building more of the same ships your species has always built, we were creating something entirely new. Each of our planet ships carries more firepower than your entire fleet, Admiral. They are faster than your fastest ships, and better protected than your strongest fortresses." Corax looked at his tactical display. The 300 planet ships had completely surrounded his fleet, cutting off every escape route. His 200,000 warships suddenly seemed very small and fragile. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Simple," Shun said. "You will withdraw your fleet immediately. You will never again threaten human space or human colonies. You will inform the Galactic Council that humanity is no longer a minor species to be bullied or conquered. And if we refuse?" Chun's expression did not change, but something cold entered his eyes. "Then we will demonstrate what our planet ships can do when we are not simply making a point. Your fleet will not survive the encounter, Admiral. Neither will any reinforcements you might call." Corax stared at the human admiral, then at his tactical display, showing the impossible ships surrounding his fleet. He had spent his entire career conquering smaller species, overwhelming them with superior numbers and firepower. Now he faced an enemy that had quietly outbuilded his entire civilization, while pretending to be weak and helpless. "You have played a long game," he admitted grudgingly. "The longest," Chun agreed. "We learned early that the galaxy respects only strength, so we built strength on a scale you could not imagine. The question now, Admiral, is whether you are wise enough to recognize it." Corax looked around his bridge at his officers, all of them waiting for his decision. They had come here expecting an easy victory against a minor species. Instead, they had discovered that they were the minor force, outnumbered and outgunned by weapons that should not exist. The age of hegemony expansion had just ended, and Fleet Admiral Corax was the first to know it. Fleet Admiral Corax stared at the tactical display for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Around him, his bridge crew waited in tense silence. Outside the viewports, the massive bulk of New Olympus hung in space like a medal planet, its weapons trained on his flagship. The smart choice was obvious. Withdraw the fleet. Accept that humanity was not the weak species they had appeared to be. Return to hegemony space and report that the invasion was impossible. But Corax had not reached his position by making the smart choice when it made him look weak. He had built his reputation on never backing down, never retreating, never accepting defeat. The other hegemony leaders were watching this operation. If he turned around now without firing a shot, his career would be over. "Sir," said Commander Vash quietly, "the human ships are maintaining position. They have not powered weapons beyond that one demonstration." Corax nodded slowly. Perhaps the humans were bluffing. Perhaps they only had a few shots in those massive weapons. Perhaps they were hoping to scare him off without actually fighting. "Analysis," he ordered. "How many ships would we need to overwhelm one of those planet ships?" His tactical officer, a young female named Kess, worked quickly at her console. "Based on the energy readings, sir, each planet ship appears to have shields equivalent to a Class 1 space fortress. However, their size means they cannot maneuver quickly. If we attack from multiple directions with sufficient numbers." "How many ships?" "At least 50,000, sir. Possibly more. And we would lose most of them." Corax considered this. He had over 200,000 ships. Even if he lost half of them taking down one planet ship, he would still have enough to overwhelm the others. The humans only had 300 of these vessels. Simple mathematics said the hegemony would win, but something bothered him about the human admiral's confidence. Chun had not seemed worried or desperate. He had seemed patient, like someone who knew exactly how this would end. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we are receiving a priority message from Grand Admiral Vex." Corax straightened. Vex was the supreme commander of all hegemony forces, reporting directly to the High Council. If he was getting involved, personally, the stakes had just become much higher. Put him through. The holographic image of Grand Admiral Vex appeared in the center of the bridge. He was an imposing figure, even by hegemony standards, his scales dark with age and his eyes hard with decades of warfare. "Corax," Vex said without preamble, "explain to me how a minor species suddenly has planet-sized warships." "Unknown, sir. Our intelligence completely missed this development. The humans appear to have been building these vessels in secret for some time." "How long?" Corax glanced at his sensor readings. "Based on the sophistication of the technology, sir, possibly. Decades, maybe longer." Vex was quiet for a moment. 300 ships, you said?" "Yes, sir. All of them larger than anything in our fleet." "And they have surrounded your force?" "Yes, sir. They control all hyperspace routes out of this system." Another pause. Corax could almost hear Vex thinking, calculating the political and military implications of this discovery. "Corax, you will attack immediately. I want to know what these ships can actually do in combat. The High Council needs to see their capabilities before we decide our next move." Corax felt his stomach drop. "Sir, we estimate heavy casualties. These ships appear to be extremely powerful." "I did not ask for estimates, Admiral. I gave you an order. Attack now." The transmission ended, leaving Corax staring at empty air. Around him, his officers waited for orders they probably did not want to hear. Corax took a deep breath. He had his orders. The High Council wanted to see what humanity's new ships could do. Very well. They would get their demonstration. "All units," he announced over the fleet communication system, "prepare for attack. Primary target is the planet ship, designated New Olympus. Attack formation Delta 7. All ships converge on target from multiple vectors." Across his fleet, engines came to life. 200,000 warships began moving toward the single human vessel, their weapons charging for combat. On the bridge of New Olympus, Admiral Sarah Park watched the hegemony fleet's approach with calm interest. Her ship's sensors tracked every enemy vessel, calculating firing solutions and threat priorities with computer precision. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer. "The enemy fleet is moving to attack. Estimated time to weapons range? 4 minutes. Very good," Park replied. "Signal Admiral Chun that the hegemony has chosen to test our capabilities. We will provide them with a complete demonstration." "Yes, ma'am." Park studied the tactical display. The hegemony ships were approaching in a complex pattern designed to split her fire and overwhelm her defenses. It was a good strategy against conventional opponents. Against a planet ship, it was simply arranging the enemy fleet for more efficient destruction. Weapons: prepare gravity hammers. Target the lead elements of the enemy formation. Gravity hammers ready, Admiral. Fire. The first volley from New Olympus was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, the planet ship launched concentrated fields of artificial gravity. When they struck the leading hegemony ships, the vessels simply collapsed. Their hulls crumpled like paper as forces equivalent to the gravity well of a star crushed them into dense spheres of metal and debris. 50 ships died in the first second. Second volley, Park ordered calmly. Quantum cascade weapons. Target the main battle line. The quantum cascade cannons fired streams of exotic particles that broke apart the fundamental forces holding matter together. Where they struck hegemony, ships simply ceased to exist. Their atoms scattered as individual particles across space. Not another 100 ships vanished. Fleet. Admiral Corax watched his tactical display with growing horror as his fleet died around him. The planet ship was not even moving. It simply rotated slowly, bringing fresh weapons to bear on new targets. Each shot destroyed multiple ships, and the weapons seemed to have no limit to their ammunition. "All units, concentrate fire on the enemy ship," he ordered desperately. His remaining ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, kinetic projectiles, and fusion missiles converged on New Olympus in a display of firepower that could have destroyed entire planets. The weapons struck the planet ship's shields and simply disappeared. The massive vessel continued its methodical destruction of the hegemony fleet as if nothing had happened. "Sir," called Commander Vash, "our weapons are having no effect. The enemy shields are absorbing everything." Corax stared at the display. In less than 10 minutes, he had lost over half his fleet. The planet ship had not even bothered to target his flagship yet, apparently content to destroy his escorts and support vessels first. "Sir," said the tactical officer, "I am detecting movement from the other human ships. They are moving to attack formation." Corax looked at the larger tactical display and felt his remaining hope die. The other planet ships scattered throughout the system were beginning to move toward his fleet. Soon he would be facing not one impossible enemy, but dozens. "Signal all units," he said quietly. "Cease fire. All ships stand down." The firing from his fleet stopped immediately. The planet ship also ceased its attack, leaving the surviving hegemony vessels floating helplessly in space. Admiral Park's face appeared on Corax's main screen. The human woman looked completely calm, as if she had just finished a routine training exercise instead of destroying the most powerful fleet in hegemony history. "Fleet Admiral," she said politely, "I believe you wanted to test our capabilities. Are you satisfied with the demonstration?" Corax looked at his casualties report. In 17 minutes of combat, he had lost over 100,000 ships. The humans had lost nothing. Not a single planet ship had even taken damage. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Withdraw your fleet immediately," Park replied. "Return to hegemony space. Inform your leaders that humanity is under the protection of the Guardian Fleet. Any future aggression against human colonies or human allies will result in the complete destruction of hegemony military forces." "Guardian Fleet?" "The planet ships." "Admiral, We built them to protect not just humanity, but any species that chooses peace over conquest. The age of strong species bullying weak ones is over. We are here to make sure of that." Korax stared at the human admiral, understanding finally dawning on him. This had never been about conquest or territory. The humans had built these massive ships not to conquer the galaxy, but to police it. They were announcing themselves as the new guardians of galactic peace. "You will let us leave?" he asked. "Of course," Park said. "We are not conquerors, Admiral. We are protectors. Take your surviving ships and go home. Tell your leaders what you have seen here. Make sure they understand that the galaxy has changed. Forever." The communication ended, leaving Korax alone with the wreckage of his fleet, and the knowledge that everything he had believed about the balance of power in the galaxy was wrong. The hegemony's age of expansion was over. The age of humanity had begun. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Within hours of the Battle of New Olympus, every major species had received reports of humanity's planet ships and the complete destruction of the hegemony's invasion fleet. The reports seemed impossible at first. Minor species did not build weapons that could destroy entire armadas. Weak civilizations did not suddenly reveal fleets of planet-sized warships, but the evidence was undeniable. Sensor recordings from merchant ships showed the massive human vessels appearing throughout known space. Intelligence networks confirmed that over 300 of the impossible ships now controlled every major hyperspace route in the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted overnight. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the Thin Galactic Council, looking up at the representatives of 47 different species. A week ago, most of them had barely known her name. Today, every eye in the chamber was focused on her with a mixture of fear, respect, and desperate curiosity. The council chamber was a magnificent structure built to impress visitors with the combined might of the galaxy's ruling species. Massive columns supported a dome that showed the stars overhead. Each species had their own section, arranged by the size and power of their civilizations. The hegemony held the largest section, followed by the Confederation, the Free Worlds Alliance, and the other major powers. Humanity's section had always been tiny, tucked away in a corner where the minor species sat. Today, for the first time in galactic history, those seats were empty. Ambassador Chun stood alone in the center of the chamber, addressing the council as an equal. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast hall, "I bring greetings from Earth and the Guardian Fleet." Counselor Thrak of the hegemony leaned forward in his seat. He was an old warrior, his scales marked with battle scars, and his eyes burned with barely controlled anger. The destruction of Fleet Admiral Korax's armada had been a humiliation that his species would not easily forget. "Ambassador Chun," Thrak said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "explain to this council how your species has violated every treaty regarding military construction. The Galactic Accords specifically limit the size and number of warships any species may build." Chun smiled politely. "Counselor Thrak, I have reviewed the Galactic Accords carefully. They limit the construction of conventional warships. They say nothing about planet ships, since no one imagined such vessels were possible when the treaties were written." "Do not play word games with us," snarled Counselor Vex of the Confederation. "Your species has built weapons of mass destruction without oversight or approval. This threatens the stability of the entire galaxy." "I disagree," Chun replied calmly. "Our planet ships threaten only those who would use force against peaceful species. We have no interest in conquest or expansion. We built these vessels for protection." Counselor Moss of the Free Worlds Alliance stood up. She was a tall, elegant being with blue skin and large eyes that showed her nervousness clearly. "Ambassador, with respect, Your ships control every hyperspace route in known space. You have the power to cut off trade, prevent travel, and isolate entire civilizations. How can you call this protection? Sean nodded thoughtfully. A fair question. Counselor, yes, our ships control the major hyperspace routes. But we have no intention of interfering with peaceful trade or travel. Our presence is purely defensive. We will act only against species that threaten others with conquest or slavery. And who decides what constitutes a threat? Demanded Thrak. You? Your Earth government? Will humanity now dictate policy to the rest of the galaxy? Not at all. Chun said, we propose to work with the Galactic Council to establish clear guidelines for the use of force between species. Defensive wars will continue to be permitted. Wars of conquest will not. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives shouted questions and protests. Chun waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. We understand that this is a significant change, she said. For thousands of years, the galaxy has operated under the principle that might makes right. Strong species have conquered weak ones. Advanced civilizations have enslaved primitive ones. We are here to announce that this era is ending. Counselor, Yith of the Stellar Republic raised her hand for recognition. She was known as one of the more moderate voices in the council. Ambassador Chun, your intentions may be noble, but the reality is that you have just made humanity the most powerful species in the galaxy. How can we trust that you will not abuse this power? Chun considered the question carefully. It was the heart of the matter, really. Every species in the chamber was wondering the same thing. What would humanity do with its new power? Counselor Yith, let me share some history with you. When humans first ventured into space, we encountered the same question. Our own planet had many different nations, some stronger than others. Wars were common. The strong regularly conquered the weak. She paused, looking around the chamber. But eventually, we learned something important. Peace is more profitable than war. Cooperation produces better results than conquest. We built a system where disputes were settled through negotiation rather than violence. Your planet achieved unity, said Counselor Maz. That is different from imposing unity on an entire galaxy. You are right, Sean agreed, but the principle is the same. We are not here to impose human rule on the galaxy. We are here to impose human values. The value of peace over war. The value of cooperation over conquest. The value of protecting the weak instead of exploiting them. Counselor Thrak stood up again, his massive frame towering over the other representatives. And what if we refuse to accept your values? What if the hegemony chooses to continue our expansion? Chun's expression did not change, but something cold entered her voice. Then you will discover that our planet ships are not just for show, Counselor. Fleet Admiral Korax learned that lesson. His surviving ships are limping home as we speak, carrying news of what happens to fleets that threaten peaceful species. You destroyed half his armada. We destroyed the ships that attacked us, Chun corrected. We allowed the survivors to retreat. We could have destroyed them all if we had chosen to. That is the difference between us and you, Counselor. We have the power to exterminate our enemies completely, but we choose restraint. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this statement. Many of them had seen the reports from the battle. The human planet ships had destroyed over 100,000 hegemony vessels in less than 20 minutes. They could have easily finished off the rest. Counselor Dren of the outer colonies stood up. He represented a group of smaller species that had often been targets of hegemony expansion. Ambassador Chun, what protection can you offer to species like ours? The hegemony has been threatening our worlds for years. Any species that chooses peace over aggression will have the protection of the Guardian Fleet, Shen replied immediately. We will station planet ships near your worlds if necessary. Any attack on your colonies will be met with immediate retaliation. Dren looked surprised. You would protect us? Why? Because that is why we built these ships, Chon said simply. Not to conquer, but to protect. Not to rule, but to serve. The galaxy has lived in fear for too long. Fear of stronger species. Fear of conquest. Fear of slavery. We are here to end that fear. Counselor Maz leaned forward. What do you want? In return? Peace, Chon said. Trade, cooperation, cultural exchange. All the things that make civilization stronger. We want to build a galaxy where species compete through innovation and art and science, not through warfare. And if species refuse to change? Asked Counselor YITH. Chun was quiet for a moment. Then they will find themselves alone in the galaxy, surrounded by species that have chosen a better path. The Guardian fleet will ensure that their aggression cannot spread beyond their own borders. Counselor Thrak glared at the human ambassador. You speak of peace, but you enforce it with the largest weapons ever built. Is that not a contradiction? Sometimes, Chun said sadly, peace must be defended with strength. We hoped that the demonstration at New Olympus would be enough to convince aggressive species to change their ways. But if it is not, we are prepared to do whatever is necessary to protect innocent civilizations. The chamber was silent again. Representatives looked at each other, calculating the implications of this new reality. Some seemed hopeful. Others appeared frightened. A few looked angry. But all of them understood that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had revealed itself as the dominant military power in known space. The question now was what they would do with that power. Ambassador Chun looked around the chamber one last time. Honored representatives, we did not ask for this responsibility, but we accept it. The Guardian fleet stands ready to protect any species that chooses the path of peace. We hope that all of you will join us in building a better galaxy. She turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the council representatives to debate humanity's ultimatum. Behind her, the voices rose again as 47 different species tried to understand their new place in a galaxy, suddenly dominated by the species they had dismissed as weak and irrelevant. The age of human guardianship had officially begun. 6 months after the Battle of New Olympus, Captain Maria Santos stood on the observation deck of Earthrise, watching the construction of humanity's newest planet ship. A massive vessel was being built in full view of the galaxy now, its hull gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. Gone were the days of secret construction in remote asteroids. The Guardian fleet was expanding openly, and every species in the galaxy was watching. The changes had been remarkable and swift. Trade. Routes that had been closed by piracy and warfare for decades were now safe under the protection of planet ship patrols. Species that had lived in fear of conquest were building new colonies and expanding their civilizations. The galaxy was experiencing a peace, unlike anything in recorded history. But not everyone was happy with the new order. Captain, called Lieutenant Kim from the communication station. We have an incoming message from Admiral Chun on Earth. Put him through, Santos replied, turning away from the VIEWPORT. Admiral Chun's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but satisfied, the expression of a man who had seen his life's work finally bear fruit. Maria, he said, how is construction proceeding on Earthrise? Ahead of schedule, sir. The new fabrication systems are working even better than expected. We should be ready for activation trials within the month. Excellent. We are going to need every ship we can get. Intelligence reports suggest the hegemony is planning something. Santos frowned. I thought they had accepted the new reality after what happened to Corax's fleet. Most of them have, Chun agreed. But there is a faction within their government that believes they can find a way to defeat our planet ships. They are building new weapons, experimenting with technologies they have never used before. Do we know what kind of weapons? Dimensional disruptors, according to our sources. Weapons that attack targets through folded space, bypassing conventional shields and armor. They think they have found our weakness. Santos considered this. The planet ships were incredibly powerful, but they were not invincible. Their shields could absorb tremendous amounts of energy, but dimensional weapons worked on different principles. If the hegemony had truly developed such technology, it could change everything. What are our orders, sir? Continue construction as planned. We are accelerating the build schedule for all remaining planet ships. If the hegemony wants to test our resolve again, we will be ready. The transmission ended, leaving Santos alone with her thoughts. Through the viewport, she could see the skeletal framework of Earthrise slowly being covered with armor plating. Each section was larger than most space stations, fitted with weapons and shields that represented the pinnacle of human technology. The Guardian fleet now numbered over 400 planet ships, with more being completed every month. They patrolled the major hyperspace routes, protected vulnerable colonies, and served as mobile bases for smaller human fleets. Their presence had transformed the galaxy from a place of constant warfare into something approaching true civilization. But Santos knew that peace built on strength was always fragile. There would always be those who resented the new order, who believed that might should make right, who thought they could find a way to overthrow the Guardians and return to the old ways. "Captain," called Lieutenant Kim again, "we have a priority." Signal from the hegemony border. It's Admiral Park on New Olympus. Santos felt her stomach tighten. New Olympus was stationed near hegemony space, watching for any signs of renewed aggression. If Park was sending a priority signal, something significant was happening. Put her through immediately. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen, and Santos could see the tension in her expression. Behind her, the bridge of New Olympus was alive with activity as her crew worked frantically at their stations. "Maria," Park said without preamble, "the hegemony is moving. We have detected massive fleet movements throughout their territory. They are gathering ships at staging areas near the border." "How many ships?" "More than we destroyed at New Olympus." "Much more. Intelligence estimates suggest they have been building steadily since their defeat. They may have over 500,000 vessels ready for combat." Santos whistled softly. 500,000 ships was an enormous force, larger than most Stishes had ever imagined possible. Even with their planet ships, humanity would be facing overwhelming numbers. What about their new weapons? Unknown. Our sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures from their fleets, but we cannot identify the source. Whatever they have built, it is unlike anything in our databases. Santos nodded grimly. "Orders from Admiral Chun? All Guardian fleet units are to move to defensive positions. We will not fire first, but if they cross the border, we will respond with full force." The transmission ended, and Santos immediately began issuing orders to her crew. Earthrise was still under construction, but her basic systems were operational. If necessary, she could join the battle even in her incomplete state. Over the next week, tension built throughout the galaxy as news of the hegemony's military buildup spread. Species that had grown comfortable under the protection of the Guardian. Fleets suddenly remembered what life had been like before humanity's intervention. Merchant ships avoided the border regions. Colonies began preparing evacuation plans. The fragile peace that had lasted 6 months seemed ready to shatter. The crisis came to a head when hegemony forces crossed into neutral space and attacked a convoy of refugee ships fleeing a civil war in the outer colonies. The ships were defenseless transports carrying civilians who had done nothing but seek a better life away from the fighting on their homeworld. The planet ship Defender was the closest Guardian Fleet unit. Captain James Wright received the distress call and responded immediately, arriving just as hegemony forces were preparing to board the refugee ships. "Hegemony vessels," Wright broadcast, "you are attacking civilian transports in neutral space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The hegemony commander, Admiral Kess, responded with confidence that surprised Wright. "Human ship, you will stand down. We have new weapons that make your planet ships obsolete. Withdraw or be destroyed." Wright looked at his tactical display. The hegemony force was smaller than usual, only a few hundred ships. But they were arranged in a formation he had never seen before, and his sensors were detecting strange energy patterns from their vessels. "Admiral," Wright said calmly, "you have 10 seconds to withdraw. After that, I will consider your forces hostile and respond accordingly." Cass laughed. "You still do not understand. Your age is over, human. Observe the power of dimensional warfare." The hegemony ships fired their new weapons. Wright watched in fascination as beams of twisted energy reached across space toward Defender. The beams seemed to fold reality around themselves, approaching his ship through dimensions that conventional sensors could not track. The weapons struck Defender's shields and passed through them as if they were not there. For a moment, Wright thought his ship was doomed. Then the dimensional beams struck the planet ship's secondary defensive system, a network of gravity wells that distorted space-time around the vessel. The dimensional weapons met the gravity fields and simply dissolved. Their exotic energies scattered harmlessly across folded space. Wright smiled. The hegemony had developed impressive new technology, but they had made the same mistake every other species made when facing humanity. They had assumed they understood how human ships worked. "Interesting weapons, Admiral Kess," Wright said. "Unfortunately for you, we designed our defenses to handle attacks from multiple dimensions. Your dimensional disruptors are useless against gravity-based shields." The silence from the hegemony fleet was deafening. "Now," Wright continued, "you have fired on a Guardian fleet vessel while attacking civilian refugees. I am authorized to respond with lethal force." Defender's main weapons powered up, and the familiar glow of gravity hammers began building along the planet ship's hull. The hegemony fleet, suddenly realizing that their secret weapons had failed completely, tried to retreat. They were not fast enough. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, the hegemony fleet was gone, and the refugee convoy was safe. News of the failed attack spread quickly through both human and alien intelligence networks. The message was clear. The hegemony had tried their best to find a weakness in humanity's planet ships and had failed completely. Any other species considering a challenge to the Guardian fleet now knew that even exotic weapons and new technologies could not overcome the careful engineering that had gone into humanity's. Protectors. Captain Santos received the battle report while standing on the observation deck of Earthrise. The newest planet ship was nearly complete now, ready to join her sisters in protecting the galaxy from those who would return to the old ways of conquest and oppression. She looked out at the stars and thought about the future. Somewhere out there, new species were discovering space travel. Others were developing technologies that might challenge the Guardian fleet. Pirates and warlords still threatened peaceful traders in remote systems. The work of protecting the galaxy would never truly be finished, but humanity had proven something important over the past 6 months. They had shown that a species could have overwhelming power and choose to use it responsibly. They had demonstrated that strength could